that note, Pete Mills. Pete, right? Pete.
Yeah, that's it, Pete. I'm happy with Pete. Yeah.
Cool. So nice to meet you, Pete. It's one of these situations where I say this on almost every single podcast now, that I've been introduced to all these fascinating people by other people, right? My community is expanding. And we have a common friend, Naomi Timperley, who is, as we have discussed, very phenomenal at what she does. She doesn't
Absolutely.
know how amazing she is. So on that note, Pete, tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, why you do it. What's the motivation behind you?
Cool. All right, that's a big question. So yeah, I I I set a business in motion 8 9 years ago, and I think that, to be honest, mate, that just tracks back from growing up with a family that were self-employed, so had their own small business, and I tried two corporate jobs actually. One was as an industrial trainee with IBM, so during university, and uh, not convinced that I told myself working for a big organization wasn't for me. I trained as a corporate lawyer for 2 years on
Oh boy.
graduation. So yeah, sins in a previous life.
Yeah, we all have them.
Yeah, so but the impact I suppose both experiences had on me was that, you know, the world's changing and technology's at the forefront. So I came up for my qualification to be, you know, a full-time lawyer, and I just was like, this just isn't for me. I think I have to go back to actually, one, being in charge of my own destiny, and two, doing things where I'm actually feeling like I'm making an impact.
Sure.
So yeah, that's where the sort of my early part of my, I suppose, entrepreneurial career with Calls 9 started.
So what your family? So you mentioned your family had done the self-employment thing, right? What was the industry that they worked in, or what did you guys
So,
do?
so, so we had a very classic British business, which was a fish and chip shop.
Nice.
Uh, yeah, so we in fact, I'm the fourth generation that broke with that.
Beautiful.
So yeah, going back two other generations past my parents, we were sort of in that sector, and my parents and grandparents were in partnership for a while. And this is going back to the 80s, mate. So my grandparents had a house which they lived in, and then you'd walk through a door and the fish and chip shop business would be next to it, so you'd come in and the customers would come in. So from an early age I was exposed to that, and me and my brother were actually expected to work in it from about 10. So,
Well, it kind of puts a new shine on community, man. If they're showing up in your door, you know, to get to the chipper, as they say, you know, it's right there.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
well, it's, you know, it's intriguing. I think, you know, being a child of the '80s, different worlds. Obviously, I grew up in California, which is, you know,
Yes,
everybody's like,
not north
oh,
of England.
you know, yeah, yeah, a little bit different. I think the temperature is a little bit different there as
Yeah,
well. You know, expectations are different, right? The realities are different. It's always fascinating to me to hear people's stories about how they came to be in the circumstances that they are, right? That entrepreneurial spirit that's been kind of invested in you from lineage, family, really,
yeah, for
truly,
sure.
you know, and
Yeah,
then the impact that you said, you know, finding your meaning within the context of all this is incredible.
yeah,
um and no doubt the stories that you heard from those customers that came in the door as well, right? It's you know, a lot, everything that we know of, you know, that gossip chain or the game of telephone that we play a lot. But you know, there's people, real people on the other side of that counter. There's real people that are, you know, walking through your front door with different varieties of human experience, right? And
absolutely.
you know, that's
Oh,
how have you seen that kind of affect your worldview? I
massive.
mean,
Massive. Yeah, you know, just listening to you talk there, you know, going back to my early sort of childhood memories where, you know, it was a very, people came into that shop and they would come into that shop at certain times of the week for not just for years. So you saw families grow up, you saw
yeah.
people move on. You know, it was that, and I think from as young as I can sort of remember things, sort of being thrown on the counter. Here's Pete. Look, here he is in his car. I had to speak to people,
Yeah.
right? So, and exposed to sort of interactions really, really early on, and also like, and this is sort of coming as I've got older, realizing that impact. And actually, what I took for granted growing up, I now see how it shaped me as a person. So, understanding the work and effort that my parents had to do every single day to make this thing work, which looked really easy, but actually, you had all these consistencies that you had to make happen. Um, and as my dad used to say, you're only as good as your last fry, which is basically the portion of fish and chips that goes to a customer. You're as only as good as that, and they won't come back if it's not right, right? So lots of real stories and real human interactions from an early age, and I think that's probably why I've always now in my grown-up career orientated towards customers and how people look and feel. So I'm not a developer. I'm not someone that can pick up and go, right, we're going to develop this product and start hammering away at the code. But what I will do with things is start going, well, how are people, real people, going to make this part of their everyday lives? And that's where the early upbringing, although it seems like a million miles away, it's dealing with people all day long.
Yeah, no, that's incredible to take all these kind of, yeah, and again, going back, it's that inbuilt learning, your exposure to society, your exposure to community has really
Yeah,
turned you into who you are today and what you do. I think we lot, given the nature of business today, I mean, given technology, a lot of times we forget about that human element. Right, I'm gonna go make this AI. I'm gonna go do this, and then
absolutely.
we,
Yeah, yeah,
we suddenly
yeah,
run into that wall that says, "Wait a second, what you've done is actually really incredibly bad," because it
yeah,
forgot that on the other end of this, the receiver or the beneficiary, or sometimes the opponent to this, somebody or a victim, if you will, is a real human being, right?
yeah,
It's mislabeling or mistranslating the story of technology or mistranslating that idea of technology into somebody else's life, and then all of a sudden, we have situations, bad facial recognition, right? If
yeah,
somebody had sat down and said, how is this going to affect society, rather than just designing
yeah, yeah,
maths is agnostic. Maths is it's black and white. There is no yeah, no,
absolutely.
but it's created by people. It's created by the same people that walk through your foyer, sorry, and went into your chipper. It's those people, it's those stories. And so I think it's fascinating to be able to take that concept and translate it now a couple decades later, right?
Yeah,
And turn that into something that
yeah,
you're helping people actually understand their audience, right? Is that the
absolutely.
nature of what alt theory is? And
Yeah, so the alt theory is right now I'm keeping it deliberately loose in the respect of some really good advice a friend gave me was don't try and reinvent yourself straight after an exit. So I at first I was like, yeah, whatever, I'm going to build in the future, and then it was like, no, I don't need to race off in a particular direction. But what I do know is I have a strong desire to help people, and I am hungry for the next story and the next part because I love business and I love the idea of building things of value. But alt theory is I've deliberately kept it a little bit woolly. Hence we say we're innovation and growth because, well, what does that mean, Pete? And then we get into the detail. But for me now, I have something that sort of mirrors who I am, which is a fluid state, and I think that ultimately is the mindset that you need to have when you're moving technology products forward.
uh, absolutely. So I asked this question of everybody, and this is a mild segue because I'm going to get back to the fluidity of alt theory in just a second.
Yeah, sure.
So we've talked a little bit about your upbringing
Mhm.
and a little bit about the community that surrounded it. But let's
Yeah.
go to the actual definition of what you believe community is, because I'm intrigued by that. My academic brain is intrigued by that. So, in your words, Pete, what is community to you?
A community for me is where it's real, it's authentic, it's accepting what people are about, what they might believe in. It's helping, it's sharing, it's collaboration. It's yeah, it's a common purpose. I'm trying to think of the things of what resonates with me, because interestingly, we're having a conversation at home at the minute, which is about moving, right? So my wife is saying, let's find a new place to move to. And so I'm looking at where I live right now, and I'm thinking, what I love about where I am, even though could it be better? Could it have more trees? Could it be more green space? Could it have whatever, right?
Yeah.
But I live around people who I know I could knock on the door, and if they needed help or I needed help, we're around each other, and there's a
Yeah.
real community, and we take pride in where we live, and we want to keep the area clean and all that sort of stuff. And then I look at other areas where I think you're just pretending to be something to fit into a lifestyle, and that Dave just completely turns me off. So a community for me is something that's very real with very authentic people in it, and that could be in a business or that could be where you live, right?
Yeah, for sure. Less Truman Show, if you will.
Yeah,
I,
100%.
it's funny. So you mentioned early on about the, I don't call them factory cities, but essentially factory cities, or these, factory villages or whatever, these things that were built around the nature of work, right? So it was kind of forced, if you will, community. We all kind of were growing together, kind of working together, doing these things together. And you have that. I've watched enough anthropologically oriented shows. I won't, I will say Time Team, because I'm a big Anglophile when it comes down to it. Yeah. So it's fascinating because you watch these things and you're looking at it from like at the telescope of millennia in some cases, but you see how that kind of nuclear aspect of humanity was built. We're built around this kind of Roman merchant city, or we're built, in industrial revolution. We were built around these factories that did, or tanneries, or were, foundries or whatever. And so I love the concept that you say. And we have this kind of, again, ideal in this day and age of, a community ends up being, a common purpose, which I agree with, right? We have to have something that joins us together, whether it be common purpose. I had some guy, one of the authors I know and respect, a guy named Christopher Rocchio, say ethos, pathos, and logos, right? The word, the ethic, the meaning, right? And all those things together. And it's great. Very, very didactic from his perspective. But that ability to go door to door and say, hey, listen, I need help, and vice versa. And you said it, and we'll touch on this a little bit because I think this is foundational to some of the other stuff you're doing with conservation, right? The ability to take care of your community in the ways that matter to you most. So you have that business, you have that personal stake, you have that familial stake, right? And so wherever you go, it's less about master planning these communities together. It's like, hey, I watched a city get built. And we can still say that today. Where I lived, as a sidebar, where I lived at the beginning of the 2000s, I literally got to watch a town being built, a la Truman Show. Master planned community. We're going to put a pool in. We're going to put 500 houses, and your boundary lines are, I can kind of see it if I squint. It's like there, it's everything mashed together, and people find that to be a measure of success. Hey, I live in this, Ladera Ranch was the name of the place. It sounds so highfalutin, so respectable, but you're literally living, in a sense, and for some people this works, but you're literally living in someone else's idea of what your community should be.
Yes.
And you try to find your niche. And do we ever go door to door these days, and actually ask, hey, what's the familial cup of sugar? Do you have a cup of sugar I can borrow, or a couple eggs? That kind of concept.
Well, my neighbor is, I'm not looking for any kind of brownie points here. My neighbor's 90, and her family live quite far away. Probably not in the same scale as in America, not California versus Boston or whatever, but
that's pretty far away.
Yeah, they live across the UK. So we every couple of weeks I go around, and we've obviously had to be careful with the COVID thing, but I cut the grass. And it takes me 10 minutes. And her family pulled up the other week and they were like, Pete, oh, please, you don't have to do this. I'm so sorry. And I was like, it takes me 10 minutes, and I have a chat with Margaret, and I feel a little bit better about the day, and that's what we should be doing. So it's funny, isn't it? I think we've lost a little bit of that, and
Yeah.
I kind of intent on bringing it back.
And we should. I think a lot of what we do in our day jobs. I think Vika said this, and I'm probably going to misquote this because I talked to him, a couple days ago. But I think a lot of what we miss is that out of our abundance, we forget that there's things that we can give.
100%.
Or in that split between work and the work-life balance, as all these employers like to talk about these. We'll give you good work-life balance. Well, are you living to work or are you working to live? How are these things coming around? And if I can use the resources that I'm given, Kira Rossborough with Esther is the exact same way.
Yeah.
If I can use these little bits and pieces of what I'm given and actually do something within my community, 10 minutes of mowing the lawn, it seems like a pittance in terms of time, effort, energy, and investment, but you're making a connection with Margaret, as you said. That's you're providing a touchstone for her. And in a day and an age where she's forced to be behind those, cinder block walls, how you're able to build this out. And if you apply this into alt and some of the other things that you're doing, if you get people to start thinking about, all right, everything you build, whether it be social enterprise or big business, right? How your interaction is with these people. What are you doing to truly give back within the delivery of this, whether it be code or whether it be whatever type of product, agriculture product or whatever? How are you able to do this? And I think that's an amazing gift that you have in order to do that, and a great heart with that. So
no, thanks,
brownie points needed, man. That's who you are. just be you. Just be you. So you talked a little bit about also the green space kind of concept, right? And keeping things clean. I know conservation, shows up large in your kind of CV, if you will. So tell me a little bit about why you wanted to focus on conservation as a part of your community.
So I've always well, I'm going to be completely honest. So, and because I was completely honest on a webinar thing we did the other week with the Rainforest Trust. So a couple of years ago, I'll be honest, I had my my lifestyle of running my own business, going to the States a couple of times a year, driving to Europe, right, for summer holidays. So the nice things of we work hard, we've got some nice things, right? And I think the Amazon fires of 2019, and I remember like looking at these images and just going, what are we doing? Like, why are we letting this forest? Why are we doing this? And I think the more I started reading about it, it was a real shock to my core about what the hell are you doing about it? You sat there, and then you go through this thing in your head, going, "Well, it's so big. What can I do? How can I make an impact?" And it was a friend of mine actually who sent me a link to, just by chance, the Rainforest Trust, and I went on the website, and for me, they're a US-based charity, but they've got a UK arm now. But they were founded in the US 30 years ago, and they basically state very clearly, if you give us $1, this is what we'll do with it. So immediately, I can see an impact that I can make as one person. And me and my wife donated a small amount of money, right? We're at Leonardo DiCaprio with $5 million in the fund.
we can't all be Leonardo. Yeah, that
we
is
can't all be Leo.
true.
So absolutely. There's only one Leo. So we did a small donation, and we got a really nice letter back a couple of months later. Obviously, they'd been inundated with things, and I was looking at this letter, and I just thought I'd like to do more. So I just rang a lady called Vicky Wallace. I just rang her, had a nice chat, and then I met her with my wife Andrea in London just before lockdown. And they were like, look, our presence in the UK is tiny, and we're looking for businesses to become corporate sponsors, right? So you get the name on the website, but you give an amount every month, which there's a couple of donors in the US which I think match fund it. So they're anonymous donors, but for whatever a certain program brings in, they match that funding. And I was like, right, great. And they give me an amount of acres. I think we save at the minute, it's something like 3,500 acres a year based on our donations. So
Mhm.
I was like, right, I've got something tangible now,
Yeah.
something I can talk about, something I can share. And if you go back to your line of work, Dave, and you go back to mine, where you're looking at early adopters and you're going, right, early adopters need to almost evangelize about what it is that they're doing. And I just thought, you know what, I get as much thrill out of them sending me an email saying we've just protected 3,000 acres
Yeah.
as I do with someone signing a contract.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm just going to do this as well.
Yeah,
So,
well, it's a different minimal viable product, right? It's not so much the running towards
exactly,
that first deliverable. It's something tangible.
exactly.
I
Yeah,
think, yeah, Carol Rossborough at Esther said the exact same thing. Like part of the reason why Esther has been successful or is continuing to be successful is that people are actually able to see where their dollar goes. And
yes,
I think it's removing some of the, let's say, historical stigmas around charities, right? Where you find out, and I'm not going to name names, but there's a certain
no, but I know what you're going to
society
say.
that's back there that you
Yeah,
realize that 10% of your dollars goes to actually doing the thing, and 80
yeah,
to 90% ends up in fundraising and doing these other things, and you doubt the efficacy of these models, right? Because yeah, I want to know that what I'm doing matters, right? Whether it be work or these things, my charitable giving or my moments. Like Doctors Without Borders to me is my cause of choice,
cool.
and I
That's
love the fact that for me, I don't need to know that this particular child or this particular person was helped with a picture. Like I'm okay with the overall kind of anonymous aspect of it, but it's
yeah,
very, very cool because I know what they're doing, and I love getting
yeah,
those newsletters, reading through them and saying, oh, this is cool. I'm doing something that's human based.
yeah,
It's not political. It's not overly wrought and fraught with these kind of difficulties. Like it's real people doing real things for
yeah,
real victims of
yeah,
wars or famine or any of these type of situations. So
100%.
I think the
Yeah,
stewardship aspect, again, as we talked about in the pre-brief, one of the uh, amazing individuals I gotten to talk to, Lucy, is looking at that conservation. And I think we have this, and this is by all means in support of it, but we have this kind of global mindset sometimes, and then we kind of forget what's happening here, like right
yeah,
in
yeah,
front of us
yeah,
too.
yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so it's
That's
great that
right.
Amazon, it affects all of us, right?
Yeah,
And I think there's a level of discomfort that drives us to betterment, right? So it's that Greta Thunberg, because I brought her up yesterday too. It's that Greta moment where it's like, why is this person so agitated about what's going on?
yeah,
This doesn't make me feel good. So I
yeah,
either need to go and make myself feel good, but by hopefully doing some good stuff,
yeah,
um, or it's agitating me to change, right? We as human beings, we always want to move towards that kind of pleasure principle, as Freud used to say. I've been using that a lot too. I got to stop reading Freud. It's driving me
yeah.
nuts. That pleasure principle of that foundation of this discomfort should drive me to betterment. It should drive me to greatness. It should drive me to helping others, right? Because that it soothes my spirit in the same way that I know I'm doing something good for my community. There you go. See,
Absolutely.
we can tie this all together.
I
So
can
it's
tie
awesome
it.
that
Yeah.
you're doing that. How would you encourage other people, like, and plug it a little bit right now for me as well? How would you
Sure.
encourage other folks within the UK, because we do actually have a large UK and Ireland audience?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Well, I think from a sustainability perspective, the climate change piece has got out of the bag. I think the science and the data is you can see now where even if we all stop using cars tomorrow and we stopped eating meat and all the things that they tell us to stop doing, um, it's out of the bag, and there is changes happening that for the next for our lifetimes, Dave. I think we're going to be seeing freak weather conditions and all sorts of stuff like that. So, what I'm thinking about is how do we preserve what we have? That's where my mindset is. I'm not clever enough to come up with carbon capture technologies. Otherwise, I'd be in my garage now having a tinker with a carbon capture technology piece. We just need to stop cutting stuff down that we don't need to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like just an analogy, the whole climate change narrative is overwhelming. And I think that people read it and it's like, I don't know what it's like in the States, but in the UK, you go for a packet of cigarettes and there's pictures of illness, graphic pictures of people
Yeah.
dying or have died that have got stuff, yet people still buy it. And it always amazes me when I'm in the petrol station, it's like, packet of 20, please. And I just see this horror picture being passed over the counter to somebody, and you're like, what? Why would you still buy that, knowing that there's a high probability that's going to give you what's on the front of that thing? Yet they still do it.
Yeah.
And I think it says a lot about human psychology. And also, when you think about climate change, me and you could just stop what we're doing now, read an article about the Amazon's drying up. Oh, okay. Right, I'm just going to go eat this apple now, and then I'll do something else. Like, it's like we're
Yeah.
programmed to just be a little bit desensitized towards things. So for me, the whole climate change piece is too loud and screamy. It's like someone set the fire alarm off in the building. No one can show us out. So what we need to do is we need to break it down, and we need to break down the problems in a more sort of, okay, well, we know that cutting forests down releases a lot of carbon. So why don't we stop or prevent doing that? So that's one of the areas where I've kind of gone, for the money I generate in my life and my wife and I generate, we can make a measurable impact as a couple with someone who is 30 years experienced. They have 195 NGOs on the ground around the world in the tropics, etc. And they can take that capital, and they can deploy it in a way that I could never do that. And it helps me sleep better at night, knowing that I'm doing as much as I can to you see what I mean? So
Yeah.
like my piece with that now is, people talk about narratives and sharing stories and stuff as a business person or whatever, but I just like to tell real stories, going back to how I grew up, I suppose.
Yeah.
And so for me now, I'm sharing that with people, and hopefully, yeah, one of my really close friends, she's got a great business in Leeds. She's joined as a Conservation Circle member. We did an event last week, and we've had a couple of businesses sign up as well. So we know that crossing the chasm marketing thing for tech products can
Yeah.
also apply to something like this, which is great.
Yeah, it's good. I think you give if you give conscience to, if I can say it that way, conscience to technology. You give conscience to
Yeah,
people. I think a lot of
100%.
that is, yeah, like you said, you can sleep better at night knowing that you've done something.
Yeah,
And for everybody, that something can be different for sure. Again, I know from my personal experience, it's going to look different for me than it is, for my friends and the people I enter, and obviously for you too. We all have our things that we want to do in a way that we sit on that table in the chipper and have those conversations with people. It's truly that,
yeah,
one person infecting another person with a great idea, and infecting in a
yeah.
good sense, not a corona kind of weird
Not
way.
not a COVID sense. Yeah,
Exactly. Avoid that. Stay home. Wear a mask. Got to put that in there because people are
yeah,
people.
yeah, yeah.
Um, but that's an incredible way to do that. So in wrapping all this stuff up, I mean, we've gone we've gone on a journey. We've gone from, Pete as a 10-year-old on a counter to Pete as a grown ass adult, saving the rainforest 1 acre at a time. Like
Absolutely.
what's one, like as a close, what's one big value statement that you have for yourself that if someone were to sit you down like I am today, say, all right, Pete, you are this, what, tell me what that is. What's your message to the world at this point?
Wow. Okay,
Yeah, I
that's a
know.
big.
I like big questions at the end because
Yeah,
it's good filler.
my brain now is trying to work out what the universe expands into. I'm going, "Oh."
Yeah,
Um,
there's theories
what?
behind that.
Yeah, God, from a value perspective, I'm just going to be. Maybe this is just a reflection of what mindset this conversation's put me in, but I am still learning, and I'm still learning about myself. I know I'm a lot clearer on what I want to do next and where I'm heading, and that is, as I was saying earlier, it's about creating value. And then, coming back to the rainforest work and all of that jazz, I don't want to be the guy sat in his electric Ferrari, because it'll be an electric Ferrari in 20 years with my white hair flowing back, with my oxygen mask on, because we've got so many viruses around us that we've released, and
Yeah.
so much, it's just having a sustainable life. And I can't see why I can't wed my capitalist instincts to actually living in an environment that I'd want to pass on, and that's it.
Yeah. The always learning part, absolutely. couldn't agree more. Same thing with living within sustainable means, right? I think that's being responsible. I know I'm going to be talking to a few folks in the upcoming weeks about responsibility, and
Yeah.
actually in season 2, which you will be back for, I can guarantee it.
Oh,
We'll be
oh,
talking about trust, and
yeah,
trust factors into that as well. We talk about community, we talk about the foundations of everything that we are. It's
yeah,
really a kind of how we grow up, how we develop, and how we become. But
sure.
that trust aspect becomes that conversation that you have ongoing. It becomes what we're doing here. You trusted me to handle this conversation. Thank you very much.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
And I
yeah,
trust your
yeah,
responses, and you can
yeah,
see, people by what they do as well. And like you're saying, I mean, if you want to have an electric Ferrari, go for it. Make sure it's done by tidal power and
yeah.
potentially wind and or solar. Let's be clear about that, right?
Yeah,
you
yeah,
know?
yeah. And you know what? It comes back to I've still not settled my mind on it. I feel like I'm sort of exploring all that stuff. I grew up, as passionately into cars, and I remember my grandfather taking me to open days, track days, and
Yeah.
once went to a Ferrari. I think I was about 12 when I went to this sort of Ferrari meet, and
Nice.
we couldn't afford a Ferrari or anything like that. And
Yeah.
I was just like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
It's bright red. People are taking photographs of it. This is what I want to be sat in, and it's like, yeah, you just get older and you think that's nice, but you got to be driving around in it with a conscience, haven't you? So
Yeah. Not all that there is in life. Yeah, I have a 63 Triumph TR3, little
oh,
TR3B.
beautiful.
And so, yeah, it was my dad's first car. And so I love it, but
That's
it's
very
one
cool.
of those things that you sit there and you're like, all right, I take pictures of this.
Yeah,
You know?
that's a special part.
Yeah.
And
So
that's the thing, man. That's it's a it's that's where you value that, and it's been forged in fire 50 years ago, and you're still looking after it, which is really nice.
yeah, we can
So
debate the assembly process on those things too, because yeah, I got some problems, but that's all right. I never met a
well, it,
Lucas Electronics thing that I've not wanted to rip out and throw into a bin somewhere. So that being said, Pete, it's been awesome to have you on this morning. I know. Thank you for
likewise,
your
thank you.
time, and thank you for the random encounter and circumstance through Naomi, and thanks for taking a chance on us.
Yeah, I
And
mean, thank you. You're putting it out there with a really good message, and I appreciate your time as well. So thanks very much,
it's
Dave. Thanks for
all
having
about people. It's all about people.
me.
So until next time,
Yeah.
I bid you
Cool.
adieu.